G'day folks. A few weeks back I made a video on how to set up your bait caster or your overhead rod and reel combo. How to put it on, how to attach the line to it, how to get it up ready to go. I got some wonderful feedback from that video and I had a few people ask me if I could make a video about how to cast a bait caster. So here it is, how to cast a bait caster. And I'll tell you what, learning how to cast a bait caster is so easy that I reckon even a racehorse could do it. Rightio folks, let's stop horsing around and get serious for a minute. If you've seen my last video about setting up your rod and reel, you've got it all ready to go, you're ready to cast. Let's do it. What I've got on here is a #1 stump jumper, but it's wounded. It's lost all its arms and legs and half of its hat. It's got no bib and it's got no hooks. You can actually buy proper casting plugs from a lot of tackle stores, and I used one back in the 1990s when I learned to cast, but it's not essential. But what is essential is that you stand on a nice grassy area like this. You don't want to go in a gravel car park or a sealed car park or on bitumen, because that will damage your line. It will damage your casting plug or your lure, but it will also fray a lot of your line. So you want to try and go, football ovals are ideal, cricket ovals and stuff like that. Just general watered areas are the best of the lot. At the moment I'm up here in the Warby Ovens National Park at a place called Wenham's Camp. There's no water anywhere. I was just up here for a drive with my wife and I just thought this would be a good spot to do this. So I've got an old #1 stump jumper, got the hooks and the bib and everything taken off. I'm ready to go. Now I mentioned this on my last video about how to set up your rod and reel, your overhead. You want to have it so that your lure free falls under its own weight but not too fast. So remember, the button at the back of the reel disengages the reel and allows that to fall, and that's about perfect. If you let that fall there now, there it goes, that's really good. If I loosen that too much, watch how fast it falls. You've flat out seen it go past the screen, look. So if I tighten that up too much, a little casting brake, that's okay. If I tighten it up too much, it doesn't fall at all. You've got to feed the line off like that. And that's what you don't want. So you want it backed off a little bit, your casting brake, which is a little knob on the side of the reel, so that the lure just falls under its own weight. That's alright. The more experienced you are, the looser you can afford to have that. But while you're only learning, I suggest you have it done reasonably tight. I also suggest that you start with a spool of cheap line just until you get your eye in. Now, casting a bait caster is a bit like swinging a golf club. A lot of the pros will tell you, pro golfers will tell you that it's not all about just hitting the ball as hard as you can. It's more about the timing, your stance, your posture, the follow through, and casting's the same. If you're not comfortable when you're standing or if you're walking, it's hard to cast. But most of all, it's all about the momentum of the cast, just like it's all about the momentum of the golf swing. So, let's make a cast. What you need to do is push the button back before you cast. Disengage the reel like that, and then I've got a bit of a tangle here, there we go. And then you put your thumb on the spool to stop the lure from falling down or to stop the line from coming off. So right now this reel is out of gear, the button is down, I've disengaged the gear, but my thumb is on the reel, my thumb is on the spool. Now, when I cast, I give a bit of pressure. I then just gently take my thumb off the spool so that I can still feel the line running against my thumb but not too tight, and I watch the lure. As the lure is about to hit the ground, I put pressure back on the spool again, so I cast. I can feel the line, stop. When I said stop, I pushed down with my thumb. That stops it from over spooling, because if I don't stop that, when the lure hits the ground, that spool's going to keep turning. It's not like the old spinning rods or spinning reels or egg beater reels where the line keeps coming off. That's not how it works. This will just keep, where the line stops coming off, this will just keep revolving around and feeding line out. And if there's no lure at the other end to pull that line away, that's the momentum. If there's no lure pulling the line tight and this keeps turning, it will all pull up here at the end of the reel and create a tangle that we often know as a bird nest. So you don't push the button now, halfway through your cast. You push it before you cast. You'll probably hear on my speaker. That's out of gear. My thumb is on the spool now. That's ready to go. That's loaded. That's cocked and loaded, ready to fire. I'm going to try and do this up close here so that you can hear the line running under my thumb. Stop. Put pressure on it. That noise you could hear then is the line running on my thumb. You're moving your thumb just a fraction of a millimetre. All you're doing, you're leaving your thumb on the reel, on the spool. You use your thumb. Your thumb is the most valuable part of casting an overhead. So you push the button down to disengage it, put your thumb on the spool, cast it, stop. Now when you cast, you can't allow slack in the line. So if you sort of whip it like that, you'll get a tangle. With a spinning rod you can do that, especially underarm cast. You can go like that, the line will go through a slack, it'll start tight, it'll go through a slack bit, then it'll pick up the slack and keep going with a spinning reel. With an overhead, if you do that, if you flick that, by the time it goes past the rod, then pulls the line tight on the other side on its way out, you'll get a bird nest. The line has to stay tight between the lure and the reel for the duration of the cast. Now to get a really big cast, you don't just heave it really fast. You've got to start slow, then gradually increase the pressure throughout the cast. And I'm going to do that now. I'm going to start slow, faster towards the end. You flick the cast towards the end. That's why you often hear people saying they're going flicking lures. They're going to go and flick a few lures around because they really do flick. The majority of the force for the cast comes from that last little bit. So you can start slow, then go fast at the end. Slow, fast. By doing that, by starting slow and speeding up, you're keeping tension on the line right from the start of the cast until the end of the cast. And the most important tools through this whole casting process are your thumb and your eyes, because you need to watch your lure. I'm watching it now. As soon as it hits the ground, I put my thumb on the spool. In time, you'll get to hear, you'll get to tell by the sound of the reel that it's slowing down, and that's when you know your lure's coming close to its target. Now, this video isn't about casting weights to pop balloons at 20 metres. That's not what I do. If you want to learn how to cast like the competitive casters and stuff like that, look up Adam Reuter, Mad Dog Reuter. That's his specialty, and he's a very good caster. And not a bad bloke either. I met Adam once. Talks more than me. There's also a young bloke over at Echuca named Caleb Oxley. He does a bit of flick casting. I've seen him bounce casting weights off walls and land in jars of water and stuff like that. That's not for me, but that's for those guys, and that's fine. All I'm doing is teaching people that don't know how to cast their bait caster, whether you've just bought one and you're scared to use it, or you're thinking about buying one but you're not sure whether you'll be able to use it. Use the guys that I'm targeting. They are easy. The main thing is to remember, push the button down, put your thumb on the spool. Your thumb is on the spool, your thumb is the main brake. Cast with a bit of momentum. Just when the lure's about to hit the ground, stop. Put your thumb on the spool, stop the spool from spinning, and you can do that any time in the flight, while the lure's flying through the air. But you have to do it before it lands, because if you don't do that before it lands, you will get a bird nest. Now, if you have your casting brake too loose, you will find you'll get more tangles and more problems. If you have it too tight, you won't be able to cast far enough. On a day like today, it's quite windy, especially where I am up here on the hill. If I cast into the wind, I increase my chance of getting a tangle or getting a bird nest, because the wind will stop my lure from progressing forward. The wind will slow down the lure as it passes through the air, and it will kill a fair part of the momentum in my cast. And once that momentum's gone, the wind isn't affecting the spool, it's only affecting the lure. So the spool's still working full steam to feed the line out to a lure that's slowing down. What's going to happen? It's going to end up tangling and you're going to get a bird nest at the front of your reel here. So I suggest when you cast into the wind to tighten your brake up a bit more than what you normally would. If you're just starting out, I suggest you don't cast into the wind at all, or try and avoid it until you get the hang of it. Also, if you're just starting out, I suggest you go and get some really cheap monofilament line just to cast. Come out to a place like this in the open, cast your heart out. If you've got a nice manicured lawn or a nice big yard or something, you can even put a bucket of water in the backyard and just continually aim for the bucket, and that's what I done back in about 1992 or whenever it was when I first moved up to baitcaster reels. Practiced in the backyard with a bucket of water, and I think there might have been some alcohol involved, and my uncle. But I clearly remember sitting there having a few drinks in a casting competition, and yeah, the more we drank, the worse our casting got, no doubt. Now, somebody mentioned to me a while back after my last video that I probably should have mentioned casting brakes, the brake weights. Inside these reels, there are brake weights. The brake weights work on a centrifugal, with centrifugal force. They're on a, how do I explain it? They're on a cylinder, a round shape. There's prongs that stick out, and there's little plastic brake weights that go out. As the spool spins and the cylinder goes around, the brake weights go out and they rub on the outside, and that just helps to create friction, which slows down the reel a little bit and helps you can be in control of your momentum. When you're an experienced caster, you can take some of those weights out. Some people take them all out, some take half of them out. It doesn't really matter. I deliberately didn't mention it. I don't think I need to mention it. I'm targeting this video at beginners, and beginners shouldn't be tampering with brake weights. Now, I went through a phase back in the 90s. I had an old Shimano Calcutta 50 and a Shimano Calcutta 100. I took the brake weights out. I've been through the whole brake weight playing around process, and these days I don't even worry about it. I bought this reel 2 years ago and it's still got all the brake weights in it. I've never felt the need to take them out. So if you're only new to fishing, or if you're new to bait casting using a baitcaster reel, I highly recommend that you don't tamper with your brake weights. The only brake you want to worry about is your casting brake here on the side, which controls how freely your lure falls, and also your thumb. Your thumb is your breaker, as I said before. They're the brakes you want to worry about. Don't worry about any brakes inside the reel. That's more for the pros, and this video isn't aimed at the pros. The pros, as I said earlier, need to go and see Adam Reuter's channel because he's a pro. Rightio, now I hope you found this video useful. Just on rods and reels and tackle and stuff, just a quick note. With spinning reels or egg beater type reels, heavier line makes casting harder. With baitcaster reels, that's not so. It is probably to a degree, but nowhere near as much of a degree. For example, I'm using 50-pound line on here and I have no problem at all. I could have 20-pound line on here and I probably wouldn't notice too much difference in the casting. Whereas with a spinning reel or an egg beater reel, there'd be a big difference between 20 and 50-pound line with the casting. Whereas with a baitcaster, it's only a small difference. I'm using a Venom 6kg baitcaster rod. This is a high-end rod. Now, rods make the world of difference to casting. I like something that's stiff. This is 6 foot long. It's quite stiff, yet quite flexible. It loads up well under weight. Stiff rods generally tend to cast a bit more accurately. They're easier to get the lure to go where you want it to. That's what I find anyway. Flimsy rods can make it a little bit trickier. So I like something a bit stiffer, and longer rods tend to give you a lot more casting distance. The longer your rod is, the greater your swing is, and the further your lure will go. Once again, a bit like golf, some of the pros have extended sticks, or they have longer than standard golf sticks, just so that they can hit further and get more of a swing. Fishing's no different. A longer rod will cast further, so longer, stiffer rods are great. As I said, I've got a Venom 6kg baitcaster. It's about 6 foot long, and I find that where I live in Wangaratta, in the Ovens River and the surrounds, in medium-sized waterways, this is absolutely ideal. Down in the lower Murray River or something like that, where I might want to cast further, I might want to get a longer rod or go for something maybe 8 kilograms or something a bit bigger. But for in my area, this is just absolutely perfect. I'm using 50-pound line. And I find using a 6kg rod with 50-pound line and a 200 size reel, that's a great combination. Good luck. I hope you found something useful out of this video, and good luck on the water.